Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everybody, and welcome along to today's video, where I've finally got round to reviewing last night's episode of Doctor Who, Oxygen. So yes, of course, apologies for taking well a long time to get this video uploaded. I've just been so busy this week that I just really haven't had a chance to get any videos recorded. So within the next 24 hours, you should be seeing 3 brand new videos from me. But on to Oxygen, last Saturday's episode. It feels such an age ago now, but I thought I'll still give it a go delving back into it, and certainly what an episode it was. I start off by saying without a doubt it's my favourite episode of the series so far. I was expecting it to probably be that way, and it certainly panned out like that. Well, at the crux of this episode, it was very much a type of story that I like, this sort of base under siege story, particularly also set in a space station, and some of the filming in particular was pretty spectacular. I thought some of the direction early on, those scenes on the hull of the ship, outside it with those 2 astronauts who, my name escapes me, I have no idea, that was just really well, very, very well shot, and even that initial shot of the 2 astronauts sort of floating through space. It was all just, I thought, the direction was phenomenal in this episode, really portraying that massive space station properly. And obviously the whole idea of this episode was kind of to make Earth, or not Earth, make space dangerous again. Whereas in the past we've had maybe made it look a little bit too kind of nice and easy and not very sort of vicious and going to do some damage, whereas this episode really portrayed that, and it really tried to hammer home that message right from the very beginning with the Doctor's lecture about how you're going to be killed by space, which obviously was some foreshadowing to how the Doctor would lose his sight later on in the episode. And what a great scene that was to open up the episode. It was another fantastic sort of lecture from the Doctor. The Peter Capaldi's putting another brilliant performance there to start off the episode, and it just kind of set it up perfectly. It showed how sort of frustrated by being stuck on Earth the Doctor is. We still don't know quite why the Doctor's stuck on Earth and why he has to defend this vault. Coming up this weekend, hopefully we'll find out. But it was just a really good portrayal, sort of building up of him kind of getting more and more frustrated with being stuck on Earth, and then obviously, as it would have to happen, going off-world has had some pretty serious consequences. We then get into all the sort of stuff on the space station Chasm Forge, I believe it was called. No idea what sort of time period it was. But of course, to some degree, it was just sort of generic space station with long corridors that look very similar and all this kind of thing. But it still felt really well done, a brilliant setting, great direction as already said, and particularly the sort of CGI long shots of the whole space station looked really spectacular with it sort of perfectly positioned in space there. I thought that was really impressively done. And some of these shots that you saw with the space zombies, whatever they were called, sort of on the hull of the ship, that was also fantastically shot as well. But I must admit, one of the big hats off and congratulations I must say is to Jamie Mathieson, the writer of this episode, who I think did a phenomenal job of giving something a little bit different, a little bit of a new twist, something you never really explored before, about this idea, this concept of oxygen sort of being sold to people and being such a commodity, to have the most sort of important commodity you could get in the whole world at that point. And just how, sort of, as the Doctor says, it's become capitalism in space, where people are getting sort of running out of breath unless they're paying for more and this kind of thing, and then that whole concept of the workers being replaced when there's not enough of them, or they start sort of not performing very well, their suits will gradually kill them off, and then they will be replaced by a new set of workers, all just done by this system. It was a brilliant sort of little twist on a base under siege story, I think, which was really, really well done by Jamie Mathieson. Now, of course, the other big thing to talk about will be the 3 main lead characters. Let's start off with Nardole, because why not? Nardole finally had something to do in this episode, which was nice. He actually was more of a main character rather than just a vault scene at the end of the episode that he was involved in. So that was good that he was a proper companion. For this episode at least, and certainly I think Matt Lucas put in a really good performance, giving a more serious side to Nardole, whereas in the past he's very much just been used as a comedy character. Coming to this episode, there's some very serious scenes between him and the Doctor where he's probably kind of being, let's say, almost his dad, like telling him off kind of thing, that he's done such bad things and all this. And it's, but although obviously he had the comedy lines which were fantastic, the moment where the Doctor's just shut the TARDIS out on the other side of this door that he can't get open, and his sort of lines about that was very funny, and that's just Matt Lucas, who I actually do find funny, unlike seemingly a lot of people. But overall, he put in a much better performance. Obviously, had a bit more to work with in this episode than he has previously, but he put in a really good performance, I thought, for this episode. Next up, it's Bill, who certainly went through the ringer in this episode. I think it's fair to say, given that she was exposed to the vacuum of space, as we were saying, which very nearly killed her, and then she was seemingly killed as she was sort of absorbed by her suit and lost the sort of, I can't remember what the words were, but she became half dead, basically. She certainly went through quite a lot there and had to put a lot of trust into the Doctor when that was all going off. Obviously, to some degree, her spacesuit malfunctioning didn't really have any reason other than to help the plot out that her spacesuit was malfunctioning. It could have been anybody's, it just happened to be hers because it fitted with the plot, you have to say. But it was still a good sort of way of introducing that peril into the show, and obviously then that scene with her when she's exposed to that vacuum is completely kind of can't control what's going on and everything. That was, again, absolutely phenomenal directing, really showing sort of the danger and how it'd really be like to be out in that vacuum, as you can barely sort of see. It's all lights going, flashing everywhere. You can't hear, you can't see, you can't control yourself or do anything. It was absolutely fantastically done, I thought, by Pearl Mackie and by the direction of it. And it was perfectly sort of referencing back to that scene at the beginning of the episode in the Doctor's lecture. It was all just linking everything together fantastically and really produced a great, brilliant scene at that. But of course, at a bit of a cost to the Doctor. And well, finally we do get to the Doctor. Peter Capaldi's performance in this episode was once again phenomenal. He obviously had something very different to work with in terms of becoming blind in an episode, something that we know has never ever happened to the Doctor before. And of course, I called it in the preview video, as I do, which is nice. No, but it was really, it was interesting to see something completely different and new happen to the Doctor and how he would sort of cope with that. I mean, that he would, and it also shows how much sort of compassion he's got for Bill and how much he cares about her, that he's willing to kind of sacrifice himself. Obviously, he can hold on a bit more than Bill can, but to certainly, at least his sight, at least he sacrificed just to save Bill in that vacuum. That was really sort of a brilliant moment from him. And then throughout that episode, the way he kind of coped with the blindness and then basically came up with a solution and won, essentially, without even being able to see anything was, well, obviously a testament to the Doctor. And it was all just phenomenally performed by Peter Capaldi. You've got to say, this is certainly his best performance of the series so far. I mean, he's obviously had a bit more to work with in this episode than he has so far, where it's naturally been a little bit more focused on Bill, because she's been the new companion and introducing her to the show and to the series. But it was now nice to have a real episode properly focusing on the Doctor and giving Peter Capaldi the opportunity to really give a brilliant performance, and he certainly did. But it did still feel a bit of a throwback with some of the Doctor's actions, something to maybe a bit more like the Seventh Doctor, because you had a lot of the episode where the Doctor wasn't revealing his plan at all. He was being very mysterious, putting people in danger, saying we're all going to die, and kind of then suddenly pulling the rug out at the end and saying, boom, I've won, without kind of telling them what's going on, everything, kind of almost letting them all assume the worst. It very much felt like something more sort of scheming and mysterious that maybe someone like the Seventh Doctor would have done in the past. It was just interesting to see that slightly different way of doing things to maybe what the Doctor normally does, where he just try and help and sort of tell people what's going on rather than just saying, let's all have a good death, and making them all assume they're going to die. But then once it's seemingly all resolved, we find out that actually it's really not all resolved, because the Doctor is blind. He is permanently blinded, at least it seems. So that's quite big. That is quite big, that the 12th Doctor can no longer see. And seemingly, although it's sort of recovered part of his eye, and it looks normal again there, which clearly they needed to do because otherwise the CGI was going to cost too much to have multiple episodes of that. He's still blind. So how it's going to be fascinating over these next 2-3 weeks, however long he's blind for, to see how he copes with that, particularly with next week's episode, but I'll leave that more for my preview video. But it'll be fascinating to see how he copes with that and how it's resolved as well, because I certainly have a theory that this might ultimately sort of cause his regeneration. I think at some point he'll need to use some regeneration energy to sort of fix his eyesight because he needs it for some reason, and then that automatically sort of starts the regeneration process, which he then puts off for a few episodes or whatever. I have a feeling that might be how it plays out. So maybe this has already been the cause, sort of ultimate cause of the 12th Doctor's regeneration. And well guys, that's about it I think for this review. I've pretty much said all I wanted to about this episode. I think just to underline, I thought it was the best episode of the series so far, certainly looking at a sort of 8 or a 9 out of 10. Right up there with some of Jamie Mathieson previous efforts, which were pretty much all phenomenal episodes. It was great to see him really pull out the bag again and give us a proper, I guess maybe the first classic story of the series, which is something I was really looking for. After 4 good but not great episodes. And well, there we go, guys. Thank you very much for this video. Sorry that it has been a little bit later than planned, but I'll certainly try and rectify that again next week with getting the reviews out a little bit quicker than I'd hoped. But thank you very much for watching this video, guys. Do let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. Remember to like, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Goodbye.